Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Sorry, I'm on my phone. It's free agency.
We're both on the phones, working the phone lines.
Working the phone. It's so funny. My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always, by the way. It's so funny watching. Like, I didn't put on ESPN at all. I was listening to a local talk radio station for the sports news pertaining to the Patriots. But I keep up on Twitter. So just so you know, not that anything's happened for fantasy football besides Waller to the Giants. But where was I going with this? I don't even know. Oh, ESPN.
I don't know.
ESPN loves it. They bring Shefty on set, and they love it when he's like, "Oh, hold on." And he walks off set, and they got a camera. A camera trained on him, and he's pacing, talking on the phone, like, "Ho ho ho ho! There Shefty goes, working the phones." Like, what are you guys doing? Like, are you that much of a large fraud? Like, does anybody watch ESPN anymore besides when you're watching like live sports?
No,
me neither.
Not really.
So, anyway, welcome to the pod. Lots of stuff going on with free agency. I'm not going to get into it because we do have a show coming up soon that will go through a lot. Not that anything has happened.
Darren Waller, Jacoby Myers.
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure I'm excited about either one of those, but we have a whole show where we'll break down some of these free agent signings, the landing spots for them, some of the trades, some of the stuff that's been going on. I believe we do that before we jump into full-on draft content, which shifts our focus a little bit to Dynasty until the end of April. And then things shift. Once we hit May, June, July, and August, man, those are prime draft months. Prime draft months for fantasy football. So today, we're going to do our early top 10 quarterback rankings for fantasy football. We're going to try to blow through them as fast as possible. We have a consensus top 10. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you have for us. You ready to go, Rick? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. Wish the Patriots made some more moves, but yeah, doing okay.
Yeah. We signed a tackle, a very bad tackle.
He projects to be a backup tackle. That's
oh boy.
That's a tweet.
Jacobs apparently deleted the tweet that he tweeted.
Did he?
Yeah. Oh boy.
This Calvin Anderson guy that the Patriots just signed was undrafted as well.
Total Pats move. Total Pats move. Lamar Jackson also tweeted that he was offered 3 years, $133 million guaranteed after the Ravens sent a report out that said they gave him $200 million guaranteed. 3 years, 133. Good golly gosh. Call him up.
Fully guaranteed is that's a lot.
That's a lot of money, but it's only $133 million for 3 years. That's bad.
That's, what is that, 45 a year?
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, we're going to talk about quarterbacks. One being Lamar Jackson. Can't not have Lamar Jackson in the top 10. We still don't know what team he's on, so that might maybe change things. But so like I said, we have a consensus list. We're going to go through our consensus list. Some guys were a tie, so we just stacked them as you would anticipate. We'll tell you which guys were the tie. But anyway, you ready to jump in, Rick?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, number one consensus. This actually I thought might change this year. He actually, for the first time in 2 years, this player didn't finish as the QB1 in fantasy football, and he goes by the name of Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes finished as the number one quarterback in fantasy football. So, essentially, right now, you would anticipate that everyone in the fantasy community, which I don't have the ECR in front of me, would say, you're going to rank Patrick Mahomes 1, which I'm curious. I'm looking at it right now. Hold on. Yep. Nope. No, they did not. All right. Interesting. They agree with us. I hate this. But Patrick Mahomes is QB1, knocks off Josh Allen. So now Rick and I can justifiably put Josh Allen number 1 on our rankings.
Yeah, finally.
He'll repeat. But Josh Allen over the last couple years has been elite for fantasy football. Nothing really is changing on the offensive side of the ball. I actually think their defense is getting worse, which would lead me to believe that the Bills are going to have to be scoring more points. No?
I agree. Yeah. I think their defense is kind of mid now at best.
Yeah.
Which means they're going to have to win games like 30-something to 30-something.
Yeah. So if that happens, a lot more rushing opportunity for Josh Allen, a lot more passing opportunity. I think this could be a better fantasy year for Josh Allen than last year was. But we'll have to wait and see. But he's our consensus 1. Any reasoning as to why you had him?
Yeah, there's also there's rumors. I mean, we'll see how things go, but they're in on Odell. They're in on a couple wide receivers. So they might add to that offense as well. It feels like they're going to really, which I don't think is a great strategy, but it feels like they're going to be really reliant on Josh Allen this year.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of dumb. You're supposed to surround those guys with talent, not just be like, all right, we got Josh Allen, we're good. I think the Bills as a team might take a step back because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? And I think that's actually good fantasy-wise, though, because, again, Josh Allen's going to be throwing the ball like 45 times a game. He'll probably run it 10 times a game. Just be super high volume in an offense that, in theory, could get better if they sign somebody. So, to me, he's number 1, but all these guys are in the same tier. The top, like, 3 or 4 guys are all in the same tier.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any argument about Josh Allen number 1 for really anyone at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you could pick your poison with some of the next guys we're going to talk about next.
I think for me personally, Rick, because we both have him 1. Rick has Mahomes 2. I have Jalen Hurts 2. So I think for me personally, there's a closer correlation to Jalen Hurts because of his rushing upside.
Sure.
And really offensively, like they're probably going to lose Miles Sanders. They got Jason Kelce back. So offensively, I think the Eagles will stay very much the same, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Jalen Hurts will still be good for fantasy football regardless of what their team ends up being next year. So I think he could, just because of the rushing, he could arguably pass Mahomes and Josh Allen on this list and be 1, and that's kind of where my head has been. But let's just talk about Jalen Hurts because he is number 2/3 with Patrick Mahomes. So we both had them consensus ranked at 2 or 3, and we both had them different. So let's talk about both. Our consensus right now: Jalen Hurts 2, Patrick Mahomes 3. Rick has Patrick Mahomes 2. I have him 3. I have Jalen Hurts 2. He has Jalen Hurts 3. Rick, explain to me why you have those 2 players swapped and why you like Mahomes over Jalen Hurts.
Again, I have all these guys in the same tier. So if you had Jalen Hurts 1, I wouldn't bat an eye. I think they're all, and then last year too, in terms of points per game, they were all within 2 points of each other. So I think it's pick your poison. For me, I just look at last year where the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, I feel like it was kind of like a perfect season, or as close as you can get to it. They went like 15-2. Just had a monstrous year. Jalen Hurts had 13 rushing touchdowns, and I don't know if that number stays the same next year. He might have even better passing numbers, but I think his rushing might go slightly down, just because, again, 13 rushing touchdowns is just ridiculous. And that's not a knock on Hurts because, again, I think he's going to have another great year because of his rushing and his passing. But with Mahomes, we've seen this for multiple years. We know the quarterback that he is. The offense is probably going to stay the same. Or not probably. It looks like it is staying the same. They got a replacement for left tackle.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney's coming back and might actually be healthy for a little bit. We'll see how that goes.
Yep.
Travis Kelce. If Juju leaves, they'll probably draft a replacement for him. So, and I don't think he's going to leave too. I think he'll probably resign. So yeah, we know what Mahomes is. We've seen it for many years. What Hurts, it was kind of like a sort of a breakout, especially with the rushing and passing. So I'll just go with the consistent guy with Mahomes at 2.
Yeah, like I was saying with Jalen Hurts, I think Hurts, the rushing upside for him is there. Whereas I think Mahomes, like you talk about, like, his 55 touchdown season.
Something like that.
Like, that was ridiculous. And then slowly year after year, he kind of decreased a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And like this year, obviously he came out and he had a really good season. I think, it's actually funny that he had as many fantasy points as he did because of the way that they were playing the game. Like, it's not typically what you would see the Chiefs do, where they like to throw the ball downfield and take it deep. Mm-hmm. And they weren't doing that with Patrick Mahomes this year.
He still threw 52,000.
I think they had like a half a yard or 1 yard less per attempt than the Patriots, or something like that. So like, it's just crazy that the
Patriots, they were like bottom 5 in the league, weren't they?
Something like that. That could be wrong. I have to research that. I don't know if they were bottom of the league. I don't know. Anyway,
good.
Don't quote me on it. But they only had 7 yards per play, so it wasn't good. Like, in terms of distance on their plays, that it worked for them because they were able to get first downs regularly. But to me, it does feel like, I don't know about you, but it does feel like the Chiefs want to throw it downfield a little bit more. That does carry more risk, and it does carry more inefficiency. So, like, that might hit things, but the big thing with the Chiefs is it seems people kind of figure out, and when I say figure out Mahomes, it's just slow him down, which is what happened in fantasy over the last couple of years, where Mahomes is still a top 5 guy, but they figured out kind of how to slow down the Chiefs a little bit. I think next year you're going to see that. You're not going to stop Mahomes, but they might slow him down a little bit to the point where he ends up like 4 or 5.
Super Bowl hangover?
Maybe. But where he only ends up like 3, 4, or 5 in fantasy football, as opposed to being one of the top guys. I personally would rather have the rushing quarterbacks and the guys who can add yardage on the ground around 600-700 yards, or more. I'd rather have those guys than have a guy that is just a purely pocket passing guy. That is a bias for me in fantasy football. Maybe I should move past it, but we all jumped on the Justin Herbert train. Look how that got us into this position.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Jalen Hurts over Patrick Mahomes for me, but I can understand why you would put Mahomes over Jalen Hurts. Number 4, yes. Rick and I agree on, unless you have any more thoughts on that?
No.
Okay. Number 4, Rick and I have Justin Fields. My God.
Yeah.
I'll let you go, Rick, because
sure.
I'm probably gonna buy a Justin Fields jersey and be a full bore the Bears fan.
I was saying how any one of those 3 guys could be number 1. You might even include Fields in that list. Mm-hmm. I think Fields could finish as the QB1 this year. I put a like $3 bet down on him for winning MVP.
Me too.
Not $3, there you go. The stars align. Last year he didn't even have a great passing year, right?
Yeah.
We saw what the receiving core is. They were the worst team in the NFL. Literally, they got the first overall pick. Yet he was still the QB4.
Yeah.
Or QB5, sorry. So he did all that as a QB5 because of his rushing. And we all know how electric his rushing is. As a passer, he had 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 2,200 yards, 60% completion, which was an improvement from year 1, a big-time improvement. Yeah. But that's still not great. But now he's got DJ Moore. Now they're building the offensive line. They're rebuilding their defense. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talent compared to last year on that team, or a lot more talent at least, especially at the wide receiver corps, because Chase Claypool joined near the end of the season, didn't really feel like he had a role. Now he's got an offseason with Chase Claypool, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. That's a pretty good receiving corps. And they might even add a running back. They might draft running back. They might run it with Khalil Herbert. Who knows? But so the passing game should be better. We know what his rushing game is. Yeah. And he was the QB5 last year. So worst case scenario, he just is the same quarterback as he was last year. He's still a top 5 quarterback. And if he has any passing improvement, he's at number 4 right now, but he could be even higher.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah. I think too, for me, it's like he definitely needs the passing improvement, I think, to take that step forward. I like to compare last season to for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
2021 into 2022 to Justin Fields, where Hurts was rushing and he ended up top 5, 6 quarterback in fantasy football that year. in 2021, and he might have been 7th actually, but he did a lot on the ground and scored a ton of fantasy points on the ground. And then this year they got him some weapons. They got him into a position offensively to have success, and that essentially put the Eagles in a position to go to the Super Bowl. But Jalen Hurts was able to have more success passing the ball offensively to add to his rushing, which at the end of the day really helped his fantasy numbers to the point where he was in the top 3 in fantasy football. So for Justin Fields to take that step, to me, there needs to be improvements on the front, the offensive line for the Bears, which it looks like they're trying to do. And then they also need to make improvements to the wide receiver room, which they traded for Chase Claypool. They have Darnell Mooney, and then they just traded the first overall pick, which I think we'll talk about and discuss on the free agency offseason show that we're going to do soon. The first overall pick, which involved getting DJ Moore on the team. So adding DJ Moore now creates the situation for Justin Fields where he has to improve passing. He has to get better.
It's interesting, though. I'm glad you brought up Jalen Hurts. If you look at his numbers year 2 and compare it to Justin Fields' year 2 numbers last season, they're very, very similar.
Yep.
Fields had 1 more touchdown, 2 more interceptions. Hurts had 1% higher completion percentage, but they're very similar. 61% versus 60, 17 touchdowns versus 16, 11 interceptions versus 9.
Yeah.
And then we saw the kind of jump that Hurts took with AJ Brown, and with some offensive line improvement. We could very well see that from Justin Fields this year.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting that. So I'm expecting Fields to have at least a decent passing season.
And on top of that, I've said all season long that he is legitimately probably, for me in my lifetime of all of watching football outside of, my early years of watching the game with Mike Vick, Justin Fields is ridiculous rushing the ball.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that he does is just like, I thought Lamar was good. This guy is different. Like, he is crazy good at that aspect. And if people start, like, if he develops the ability to pass the ball on top of being able to do,
which is funny because in Ohio State, he was known as a pass-first, run-second quarterback.
Right.
Like, he could run, but he wasn't a runner. If he just can do that in the NFL, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league.
He is this guy for fantasy football that is just like, he has these, like, I think he has a much higher ceiling, and he has the ability to be a much better passer than Jalen Hurts is. I mean, we saw how much arm strength Jalen Hurts has in the Super Bowl, and that I didn't want to say nothing about that.
Right, and Fields has a better arm than Hurts. He has a much. I don't think there's any question about that.
So, like, I think he has the ability for fantasy football purposes. I don't know if he can become, a top 5 NFL quarterback where he's dominating and he's in that conversation. I don't know. I don't know if he can become that.
Sure.
But in terms of fantasy football, there is a massive chance that he could be a number one quarterback in fantasy football.
I think he's going to be.
Time.
I think he will.
So, number 4 is safe for us.
Yeah. Even though people might see it, and at first, especially casual people might think it's a hot take.
The next 2 guys that we have on the list are Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. These are 2 guys that we have ranked in different spots, but are similar in terms of rank. So, we'll stick them in the same conversation. I have Fields. I have Jackson 5, Burrow 6. Rick has Jackson 6, Burrow 5, so it's just swapped. You like these quarterbacks that can throw the ball more than the quarterbacks that can run it, because I have a clear tendency, I guess. Because I like Lamar doesn't have a football team yet, and ranking him 5 is kind of strong. He gets hurt regularly, which is a very real concern, but when Lamar is on the field and Lamar is on, he is a ridiculous rusher, and he can pass the ball as good as, most quarterbacks in the NFL. So to me, it's like he's a good fantasy quarterback, and if you hit him at the right time, he can be the QB1 of fantasy football. Like, he has that kind of upside. Like I said, he has that rushing upside. So if he throws for 3,500 yards and, 30 touchdowns or something stupid like that, not great in terms of passing yards wise, but that's enough for fantasy football to get you a bunch of fantasy points, and then add on top of that rushing. He had a stretch of games this year where he scored like 40 points 3 games in a row.
So the beginning of the year,
he is ridiculous, and if he has a full season of being ridiculous, then you'll be glad you have him on your fantasy team. He's probably going to be drafted slightly lower this year, which means that he's going to be cheap. He's probably going to be a 6th, 7th round pick, would be my guess. So I like him in that slot. Over Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow being a pocket passer, like I don't think he can't be a top 5 quarterback or similar to Mahomes in terms of what he does for fantasy football. Because didn't he do it this year? Wasn't he top? He was top 4 this year. Yeah. So like he can do that. I just think that his ceiling pass wise is in that conversation of like, 4, 5, or 6 or 3. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he has the ability with just the passing portion of his game, unless he's throwing, 45 to 5,000 and 40 plus touchdowns, to get into that conversation of being a 1, 2, or 3 guy. Whereas I think Lamar, when he's healthy and plays and all that stuff, can ascend to that. So for me, it's an upside thing and a rushing thing. That's why I got Lamar over Joe. But tell me why you have Joe over Lamar.
It's more of a Lamar thing. These guys are, if you want to say a teardrop after Fields, maybe, which isn't a knock on these guys, but it just in terms of like who can finish as a QB1. But Lamar to me has, there's too many questions as of right now. Mm-hmm. Where is he going to play next year? If he's on the Ravens, what is the team going to look like? Is he going to stay healthy? There's just too many questions. The last 2 seasons, he's missed 4 games. Mm-hmm. But I think Lamar at his ceiling is better in fantasy than Burrow at his ceiling. So I'm willing to move Lamar up depending on what happens in the offseason. But as we stand today, I would take Burrow over Lamar because, again, we just have too many questions. And, Burrow is not going to be a QB1 in fantasy or even a QB2. But, man, he's going to be solid. Like, the guy who had him this year in our league, every single week he was getting him 25, 20 fantasy points every single week. And
it was consistent.
It was very nice to have, especially if you have a good team around him. Like if you have good running backs, good receivers, good tight ends, and you got Burrow at quarterback, you're set because you're not gonna lose from your quarterback flopping, which did happen with Fields for a week, or it could happen with Lamar for a couple weeks. Yeah, there was weeks where Lamar would get like 14 points and then he'd get injured. Like Burrow just was very consistent all season. And, I don't think he's going to finish as a QB1, but it's possible. Yeah. If he has, like, what he's doing right now, he's finishing as a top 5 quarterback, throwing 35 touchdowns and 4,400 yards. Yeah. If he has a year where he throws 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, which I think is possible with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Burrow, then you could be looking at him as, like, a top 3 fantasy quarterback. So I think it's close, but that's why I have Burrow a little higher.
Okay. For the next 4 guys, let's speed round. I think some of them are the same for us. Let's see.
Herbert's 7.
Herbert is 7 for me as well.
Lawrence is 8. So next 2 guys.
Yeah. So Justin Herbert, on the consensus, we have 7. We both matched him at 7. So we both kind of agree exactly where Justin Herbert should be.
And he's the guy I might end up with a lot this year because he's coming off a bad season and might fall in drafts.
Yeah. I think he could be a guy that I end up targeting in drafts because he does have that upside. There are some concerns that I think as we approach the end of the free agency period and when we get to the end of the draft, we can kind of have a little bit better of a picture of what the Chargers are going to look like. But right now it looks like we don't have any news on it yet, but Eckler sounds like he is probably not going to be a part of the team next year. The receiving core is getting older, and I don't think they did any favors to the team keeping Brandon Staley as the head coach.
No, they did get Kellen Moore though.
They did get Kellen Moore. That might help, but I mean we've seen what Dak Prescott has been in terms of fantasy football, so it's right around that 7 to 8 range. I feel like Herbert is like Joe Burrow light in fantasy football, where he's like he's a pocket passing quarterback, doesn't really run the football, and like he can either be a guy that gets you 35 on a given week and win you a week in fantasy football, or he can drop 15 and be the reason why you almost lose. So he's just inconsistent and stuff like that. And like, I'm willing to take the risk on him later in drafts. Like if he's in the 8th or 9th round, 7th, 8th or 9th round,
sure.
like I would be willing to jump on
which
that.
He might end up being.
Which he might very well end up being. And he does have upside, but I think that upside is like capped to like 5th.
Yeah. I see the Chargers worry me a little bit because the Brandon Staley thing. Keenan Allen, I think, is not the same receiver he once was. Mike Williams is still good, but then they might trade Eckler. So I don't really know the direction the Chargers are going in. But what I will say about Herbert is I think he actually has a little bit higher of a ceiling if they surround him than Burrow. We saw it in year 2, his second year in the NFL. He finished as the QB2 in all of fantasy. He threw 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns. I think Herbert is capable of having those monstrous passing seasons. Not that Burrow isn't, but we've just seen it with Herbert. And I think Herbert, he didn't run much this year, which that might be a sign of what's to come for his future because they don't want him running all over the field. But in his first year, he did have 5 rushing touchdowns. And then in 2022 or 2021, he had 300 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So this past year, he didn't rush at all. Only 140 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns. So if he goes back to rushing just a little bit, that will help with his fantasy ceiling. But yeah, Herbert's a tough one because I really don't know what the Chargers are doing. And we'll have to see how that the rest of the offseason plays out. But I still think he's ridiculously talented and would take him in drafts, especially if he falls, which I think he might.
Agree. Trevor Lawrence, I think, to me, is going to be the biggest and baddest breakout superstar quarterback in the coming years.
If he's the 8th quarterback off the board, which we both have him ranked 8th, I feel pretty good about him still. Like, I think he's in the same tier as Burrow, Lamar, Herbert. He's
currently, this year, played 17 games, 303 fantasy points. He finished as the QB8 in fantasy football. He can definitely improve upon that going into next year. I think he does have similar kind of situations to Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, where he's a pocket passer, so he's not going to provide that elite rushing upside. But
I'd make the argument though he does run, or I don't know if he does, but he's capable of running more than those guys.
Yeah, but I think all of those guys are capable of running. I just think that their play style is pocket.
Right, but Trevor Lawrence, I think he ran a lot, maybe not a lot, but he ran a decent amount in college, like more than Burrow and Herbert.
Right.
I think he ran for like 500, 600 yards in college.
Yeah, that could be true. But, I mean, I think we both agree that this guy could be
he's
a
pocket
smash
passer,
breakout.
I mean, that's...
We could be, he's going to be a smash breakout guy this year. And I think, I hope people don't draft him too high because I would love to draft him in that same vicinity as Justin Herbert, and get him on my team. Like, I'm probably going to end up with a lot of Trevor Lawrence in drafts and hope it works out. But he was great last year. I think he's only going to get better going into year 3. And usually that's a year that establishes a player for fantasy football.
Right, and he's getting Calvin Ridley, man. I know he's been out of the league for a while, but if he plays like he did when he was healthy with the Falcons, he's getting a legitimate wide receiver 1. Yeah. When he already was the QB8 last year and had a pretty good passing, what was it, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions?
Yeah.
That's a good year, 4,000 yards.
Right.
So yeah, he's poised for a monster year.
Agreed.
I think if everything continues to go the way that it is, and Calvin Ridley is the same player, I might even move him higher than Herbert. I might move him up in the rankings. Like he could have a big time year.
Yeah, definitely. And I might move him up too as the off season goes along. But anyway, number 9. We have Deshaun Watson. I have Watson 10. Rick has Watson 9. I
think there's a huge tier drop.
There's a huge tier drop after Trevor Lawrence. The big thing with Watson is that I don't know where he's going to get ended up drafting. I don't know where he's going to end up going in drafts in August. My guess would be people are going to hype him into the 7th or 8th round. That would be my guess. But
I'd probably stay away.
If he ends up being an 11th or 12th round draft selection, I definitely like to take him as a sleeper guy. That if he goes back to being normal Deshaun Watson, we know what that is. We know he can be a top 6 or 7 quarterback in fantasy football and get the job done. You know what I mean? But I think that there's some drawbacks with Deshaun because he sucked last year. Like when he was on the field and he was playing in those last 6 games, like he was not good. Like it did not look functional. It didn't look good. He didn't look comfortable. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it almost made you like to the point where they restructured his friggin' contract already. So it's just like, I still think they believe Deshaun's the guy, but it's one of those situations.
And he was away from football for 2 years.
Right. So it's like maybe he just needs to have, an off season with a team, working out, reps with his team, have a full training camp, full preseason, all of that stuff, and then he'll be ready to go for the regular season. And we'll see that. But
I mean, his numbers were ridiculous the year he got suspended.
Yeah.
His last year in Houston, he had a 70% completion percentage. That's 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and he had rushing.
Yeah.
He had 400 rushing yards too to go with that and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's borderline MVP numbers.
It's insane.
But yeah, last year he was awful. And part of me is like, I do give him the benefit of the doubt because he was away from the game for so long, but it's also gross. Like what if he just lost it, or he's just not the same player? Right? It's I don't know. And the Browns, like, the Browns are a real wild card team. Like they could be good, they could suck. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks there with Deshaun Watson, but we have seen it in the past, and that's why I have him ranked as high as I do. And I think he's capable of being a top 10 fantasy quarterback for sure. I mean, he's even capable. He was top 5 before his suspension, so we know what he's capable of. It's just a matter of seeing it again.
Right.
But once you get past 8, I think it's a lot of either, mid quarterbacks or dart throws. So if I'm going to take a dart throw, I'd rather a guy that I think could be top 5, and that's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say for me personally, I don't want to draft Deshaun Watson at all unless he's late in the draft.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I feel like the lower I rank him, the less I'll get him because people are going to draft him far higher than I will. So I don't plan on having a whole ton of Deshaun Watson. I don't plan on acquiring a whole ton of Deshaun Watson, even though the value in Dynasty is probably pretty low. But anyway, number 10, I think this is probably the steal of the draft. And I know there's a lot of questions going on, and there was an injury, but Kyler Murray, number 10, the final guy we'll talk about. I have him ranked 9 right now. Rick has him ranked 11. He'll explain the injury situation with Kyler and why that makes him nervous. But if he's healthy and he's ready to go, for me, like, he's one of those running quarterbacks that kind of fell off a little bit this year and that could have a really good season coming up. Hopefully, he puts the work in and learns the new offense, and that kind of works out for them. But I still think it's there for Kyler Murray. I don't think he's like elite, like the top quarterbacks in the NFL, but I do think that he is a very, very good rushing quarterback, and that he can do a lot of really good things with his legs. And that automatically puts him in a top conversation in terms of fantasy football. So I think like 9 or 10 in the rankings is low for Kyler Murray. To me, but we'll see what happens as the off-season goes along with the injury status.
Yeah, if he's healthy and ready to go, I think it's a great steal to get him in this range.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous. All the reporting I've seen says that he's not going to play week 1. There was one report that they said that they were going to take it slow with his injury.
Yeah.
Peter King had reported that the expectations is he will not be ready to go to start the season. I think they're probably, and not to mention the Cardinals kind of suck.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to rush him back. I think they might not tank, but they're going to trade Hopkins. J.J. Watt retired. They kind of are retooling here a little bit. I don't see them rushing into anything with Kyler Murray. And if he misses the first, let's say 6 games of the season, I don't want to draft him. Or if I'm gonna draft him, it'll be like super late rounds.
Yeah.
It'll be like a Deshaun Watson situation all over again.
If he's missing a ton of time, I would anticipate that as well. But
yeah, and so for me, there's just other guys I would rather have. If I know he's going to miss part of the season, and then when he comes back, he might not even be fully healthy. He might not run a lot because he tore his ACL. So I think this year is going to be kind of a recovery year for Kyler. So yeah, that's why I have him as low as I do. But if he's healthy and we see reports change throughout the offseason, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go week 1, I'll move him up. He won't be at 11. He'll probably be where Deshaun is at 9. But we'll see how it goes.
Okay, there you go. There are the top 10 quarterbacks for fantasy football. For us, consensus: Allen Hurts, Mahomes, Fields, Lamar, Joe, Herbert, Lawrence, Watson, and Kyler. Rick also, as a little tidbit, he ranked Trey Lance in his top 10. So keep that in your
sir.
mind. I'll probably get him explaining that later. But we'll talk to you later, guys. See you later.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.